Star. Welcome to iStar History 20. That was a pause. Okay. I'm going to very quickly, having lost a few seconds here, try to take you through the whole story. I'm not going to take you through all the next big things I decoded. I showed you those before. But in 2005, imagine this. A person in his living room with time to spare comes up with a plan for the people of Earth to buy out the people of Earth, to buy out all nations and all enterprises and create a global enterprise of us. Not eliminating private enterprise, but the global enterprises and the global resources, changing the entire world into a structure with one single global open market and one single global currency. A currency that was not paper, but computerized virtual currency that could connect our enterprise together in a new way. Anyway, it was sort of as I built the story, because it was like a fantasy story, but I never wanted it to be fantasy. I'd rather have it be reality. But if you can't make it a reality by now, in 7 years, then I'm ready for anybody to take my story and the content I've created over 7 years to, well, I became somewhat of a madman. My mind was racing beyond the prescribed speed limits in the state of California and was way too grandiose to be left out in your public domain. And, well, so I recognize my mind was radioactive, but it only came about after the radioactive ideas in my mind, which I believe is truth, and you can choose to believe whatever you want. I became, in my mind, well, in my shawl, which I thought is maybe your shawl. You see, what are you writing the shawl? I started writing I call them screen plans, and, well, before I was writing about the destruction of Earth, and then I decided to write about what's the best future of Earth. How do you describe the, transition between everything we've ever done and known to the history of future of Earth? How do you describe when man advances to the next level of human existence, where he breaks out beyond the bounds of a construction, of a monetary illusion, the bounds of an illusion of reality that is oppressed, well, on potentiality. And so that's because I became the prophet of prophets. I envisioned a modern day Atlas Shrugged, where the Atlases didn't shrug, but they became angels. I imagined that there were enough Atlases with billions that would become angels to capitalize a private enterprise, to privatize all of the enterprise of Earth, well, and buy out all the governments, and then endow the people of Earth with stock in that enterprise, with dividend-paying stock, virtual stock, in an enterprise that was balanced and computed so that we could grasp prosperity. Now, to imagine this is like to imagine in 2005, just think of this, really. Look around your stores and just imagine that everything is cancelled. Causes you know them are cancelled. Almost everything you see and you cancel within 7 years is obsolete, because we've taken all of our potentiality from all of our planet and architected it to optimize the value creation and our delivery of value to every consumer. We get more for our money and more money to pay for more. And anyway, if you do the higher law order of an economic paradigm where we have a single world bank with its own world currency, a reserve, and of capital that could advance the state of human knowledge, because from infinite minds come infinite capital. Well, maybe not. you could do the math or not. Anyway, so here's the articulation there. So let's say all of a sudden people got the message, because I sent out the message out in various ways, like, well, at first with an offer to buy California for 1,000 years of peace and justice on earth. I wanted people to think, what might that be worth? Okay, but think about this. Okay, it's the movie. Okay, so what happens? Okay, so all of a sudden you're this crazy guy with a plan. Well, what if they heard the plan and say, you know what? Not a bad idea. We gotta get the leaders of our nations. We gotta get the people that are rich, and the rich that are like rich trying to give back to the poor know each other from the same charities, so they'd hook up with each other and say, listen, we're gonna conspire together. You actually have to sign a letter before I'm gonna tell you, but once you tell you, you're an angel, you're in. And we're conspiring. The rich will buy the world for the people to secure our own prosperity, and to secure our world, and to turn the world into a capitalist enterprise, but enhanced capitalist, where everybody owns shares, and there are no nations. No nations, imaginary nations to war. We are one nation, one vote for us. And so, sorry. Okay, so that was the idea. Now, think about this. So what does that mean? Well, for me, it may mean nothing. They left me for 7 years in this, like, fantasy reality land. Okay, see, in reality, I must accept that I'm just a crazy guy with crazy ideas, which I accept, but I think they're a crazy screen plan. Anyway, here's the other thing. Okay, let's say I was right. Well, so then I'm like in the middle of this weird character movie where I'm sort of my own Truman. I can't get out, I don't know. I'm running around sort of Forrest Gump in a way. That character, if you think about it, wandering around, if they knew, and by the way, in my vision, very quickly, Bush would know, and all of the CIA would be in on it, and all the KGBs. You see, you'd have all the national securities of all the worlds start working together for one plan, a plan of us. This gets really strange and weird. Okay, so now all of a sudden, behind the scenes, what's happening? Well, see, we don't want to just announce to you we think we have a plan to get there from there. There's a lot of details to get behind the plan to create a merge of all nations, of all economic interests on the planet, to buy out the dark side, to turn it all light. There's a lot behind that plan. And so, the angels would have conspired to let our world go as it would have gone, to let the mortgage prices I won't say I predicted, they should have known it was easy to see, especially anybody living in California. Okay, the mortgage, it's like, okay, that's a bubble. You gotta know a bubble where you see bubbles, and your reality is a bubble. Your entire economic reality is a bubble of expectations. Expectations that may be unreal. Expectations built on, well, one global monetary construct, an illusion that itself is suspect. And so, you see, if you go out to buy the world, and you can create a new currency that's worth more than your world, it's not very expensive to buy out the companies. But see, what do I pay to offer them, or these people to buy them out? I would pay them more. I pay them more. Simple plan. We're going to eliminate taxes, but in its place, everybody will crave like a plan. At what point in time is enough enough? I think, and I said a number, and let's say that's not a number, but let's say it was today. Let's say everybody who's billionaires take the Bill Gates Warren Buffett pledge and say, all but $1 billion goes to the people of Earth. Now think if they conspired with those billions to take advantage of the best investments, because if they knew, this is the secret, if everybody had insider information I gave them, that they couldn't disclose because it was private, but they were on their side, which is our side, which is us. Well, they could be trading on behalf of the people, and there would be no law against it because we'd be, well, overcoming the laws by basically casting them out into a new enterprise in the end. And, well, ultimately it's for charity, so it's a really complex process. Well, anyway, it was my insider information on a bid to buy the world. Saw if the world had a bid, and we took advantage of it to watch your markets go up and down. Well, in the long run, we must make everybody whole, and then some. That's the idea. You see, imagine going for 7 years in what you know and think is reality. But see, in 2006, I declared your bad news is cancelled. And you can't show the good news. Now imagine, all of a sudden, good news was going around your world. You could certainly keep the news from me. You can keep reality from one person. Like, all over the place, all you have to do is surround him with people, don't tell him anything. And you surround his channels with people, tell him lies, but anything. Well, see, that's interesting. But anyway, so, here's the thing. Okay, so you could have a world changing itself without the rest of the world knowing. Well, why would you do that? Well, because you'd have these bad news channels that kept showing the bad news. You see, you want to ultimately get to a point where, like, you've moved people over, and at one point we declare, hey, guess what? The rest of you guys still in the bad news knows. Behind the scenes, the angels have been changing the history, the future of Earth, and we've recapitalized and restructured the coordinate enterprise, and you are now offered a part of that enterprise. Everybody will be offered a job. Everybody will be not a member of a nation and ruled by a nation, but contracted with an enterprise of us. A fair and voluntary contract, but one that you would reasonably agree with. And if you want to operate outside of the rules and paradigms of our places, we'll find some desert islands for wacko, free, crazy people. And, well, ultimately, in terms of justice, I had a plan. It was my Alice on the Moon plan. Go ask, those guys from the 50s. Alice to the moon, Alice to the moon. Well, I would imagine if people really wanted to keep killing, that we would send them in spaceships to the moon with a big giant place and a big giant view and lots of cameras. Let them kill themselves. We could watch it. Why would we even want to watch it? We just record it for posterity to, like, have scientists look at it, but don't expose ourselves to it. Let them kill each other. When they get tired of killing and fighting, they can step outside and have a smoke. And, well, there's plans for anything we might come up with if we start choosing to. Well, here's the basic notion. If we're coming down to the last 10 days of the American election in 2012, if we got ourselves from the right to the left around the same table, Democrats, Republicans, capitalist, communism, libertarian, all of it around the same table, and started to recognize sort of the universality of the circle of us, and started, well, it all gets back to the story of true economics. And that's why I think it's a story of God, because there's karma in this story, because that's the monetary illusion. When we share one bank, we can print infinite money. At least in the first 100 years. Nobody could ever argue that, if not the next 1,000, because we own the world, or the fish in the sea, or the force. You see, that's what we do. We buy those assets, then merge all those assets into a bank of the nations. And we protect those assets because they're our bank, and they're our resources for growing our prosperity and our knowledge and humanity from here to infinity and beyond. Thank you, and, well, that's the beginning of the future the history of the future of Earth as I sort of described it? Can you imagine the things we could do with a story like that?